Good afternoon. This is John Bushkush. There's a piece of my sheet music that I started writing in December of 1961. This was written in 1960, the second sonata and the third sonata. And we'll talk about why I showed you that in a minute. Um, but today, um, I want to talk to you about my plans for the immediate future, next few years, given how chaotic the political climate seems to be, and the social climate, and all the polarization and so forth. So let me just start by saying, our whole civilization in the United States and in the West seems to be undergoing a reset. And Trump is, Trump won the election. People voted for him, not really understanding what he was going to do. Um, but we face changes in our individual lifestyles because it's coming up because of climate change and other pollution and possibly pandemics like we had, possibly threats to the power grid like extreme solar storms. Um, and, individual countries are sort of prepping for their own futures and not thinking about the entire planet very well, particularly Russia, particularly authoritarian countries, Russia and China and North Korea, but particularly Russia right now, as we know. And they're very concerned about their own birth rates and settling and the morality of their own people, and that's causing a lot of tension with the West. And we're sort of sliding back into what they call autarky, where countries are supposed to be more self-sufficient. People are supposed to be able to do more for themselves. And that filters down to being even a personal moral virtue. And so uh, that means then what we're getting is Elon Musk and Trump's version of it. We could have faced it from the left. The cancel culture was imposing a different version of that on the left. And I'm not necessarily convinced that one side is more dangerous than the other, right? I'm kind of right in the middle. But one of the things, particularly, is out of control spending, and Musk is right about that. And taxing the rich isn't going to completely get rid of the debt problem. We can't constantly run up against the debt ceiling all the time, get in trouble with that. Entitlements, Social Security. Social Security is going to have to be revamped. Um, and even in 2033, it'll probably be more critical than that. And it's unclear exactly, as in previous videos I've made, exactly what's going to happen. There are rumors every day. So far, I've gotten all my benefits, and I've checked, and everything seems to be okay. Okay, I'm not aware of any overpayments, and the address is correct and everything. But I have made up sort of a reinsurance policy where with my trust, where I can have the beneficiary part of my trust paying me for up to 2 years in case it gets stopped. And that would also be true of the pension from my last employer, which is substantial, still going on. Whether I would have the legal right to do it with a grantor trust would depend if the entire value of the trust was used in means testing. Then I would continue to have a right to do it. But I've set it up for 2 years, so I'm going to announce it to the beneficiaries in a letter soon, the annual letter, and but that would take me through April of 2027. But but our whole society, is undergoing a reset. The Overton window. I think Trump is trying to push the Overton window, um, and Musk, as to what we think, how we think about our futures, and making some things more acceptable, even survival of the fittest. the idea that people need to own their own shortcomings up to a certain point is becoming more accepted. There's also personal resets, coming back after taking a loss and sacrificing something. I've done that a couple of times. After, particularly when coming back home, coming back to Virginia with mother before, after living away for many, many years and working, having interesting lives, interesting jobs, and came back in 1988 and then built my life back and lower salary and everything, but built my back up and wound up writing the book about gays in the military. And then I came back again in 2003 from Minnesota, where I had transferred and after losing a job and moved out of the house in 2017 and gave up a lot of my blogs in 2022. I've had to reset things when I thought something wasn't sustainable personally for one reason or another, whether your income is earned by your work or whether it was inherited. Some of it was inherited. My mother passed away at the end of 2010. That is something that matters sometimes. So my personal vulnerability to what Trump is doing, I don't think I'm as vulnerable to being attacked as some of the more higher profile figures. Like the things I say are generally a lot more moderate. But the trust structure I have could come under question. There are ways it could. And the Social Security issue and the pension is probably where I'd have the most vulnerability. But I'm not willing to join other people's fights on either side. That would destroy my own reputational identity. And the reputational identity isn't about pronouns or name changes. It's about just what you're known for doing. And I don't want to be known just for being a fighter on one side or another when that both sides are so polarized and so extreme. I have to stay my own course. And that means I have to own my own shortcomings. I was behind as a male growing up, and the sissy boy syndrome and all the stuff we've talked about before in previous videos. So I've got basically two big life components. One of it is this kind of professional amateurism, the way I've run my blogs and video channels. And, I haven't run them commercially. I've run all this since 1997 for 25 years. And flat websites too. And they've changed, there was a big change in 2022 that I thought was necessary, that I couldn't sustain what I had. But I can't keep even the level of activity I have now with this video channel and one remaining blog up for forever. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the other thing is the internet activity without gatekeeping, and that I talk about anything. I talk about things that substance and as issues. I don't show porn or anything, but the possibility is that we could wind up with a serious situation where people aren't allowed to talk about sexuality outside of heterosexual normativity at all because it's thought to corrupt, to influence minors. That's part of the problem of how gender identity got started. I've talked about that for a while, and with all the things that the left has tried to do the last 10 years, particularly since the pandemic. We might not continue, or most likely we wind up with a much stricter age verification system that I think could be done, even though people are saying it can't. I think there might be a way to do it, particularly tying it to devices that could work. And that's before the Supreme Court right now, because there's the age verification laws for porn sites. But that might expand to talking about anything, that's at all unsuitable for minors, because it could be taught in school in lower grades. They've seen it online already, and that's one of the reasons why we've had radical ideology being taught in school for the past 10 years, but particularly in the last few years. And we contributed to that by being out in public for many, many years and everything. So that's one big thing. So my own particular belief is my own personal agency, my ability to be out in public and keep these sites, the video channel and the one blog, and keep self-publishing and publish several more things. I'll talk about that in a minute. I see that as probably running out by the end of 2028, one more term, a little bit less than 4 years. I'll be 85 then, which is the age at which my mother had coronary bypass surgery suddenly. And when I thought it was so old, she was too old to have that, but it had changed. But I don't want to be in that situation, so I don't expect to do that myself. Now, I could conceivably take money from the beneficiary part of the trust and move into a place like Goodwin, where you pay a huge deposit to move in, and then you get assisted living if you need it. Now, I don't need it now, but that kind of guarantees that you'll get it if you need it, and possibly by around then, I could be looking at something like that. So I just thought I would let you know. I basically have 4.5, let's say 4.5 projects, or let's say 5 projects really. One of them is to make a short film commercially. The William and Mary Expulsion. It's called An Expulsion, and I presented in December. Read the screenplay and in post in December, and read it in a practical screenwriting group and everything. Possibly that could be made as a big, strong video essay instead. It could be made. There could be other, but to get support, that could lead to filming everything as a series. That's something I would be interested in doing. So that's one thing. But part of this then is to rewrite the Do Ask Do Tell book, and this didn't move, did it? Yeah, this is sort of the general outline for a book that would have all seven. It would have about 7 short, 7 feature films embedded for varying length, and then commentary in between. But the book is written in a style to show you what would be acted if it were made into a film. And I have, it took me out. It's hard to tell when you're bouncing out here. This is an example of what it would look like. So that's a possibility. That what would be written in screenplay format is shown just as normal dialogue, but then you need to fill in all the action and scene objects and everything to make it interesting to read. But that's one idea. If that were, because I have to make up incidents and make it more filmable if it's actable, that elaborating it that way could be a problem legally or something, because people are 60 years ago, but still could be from. Another way would be possibly to rewrite the third book, the third one, expand the chapter on free speech, add a chapter on gender ideology and how that relates to the polarity theory of Rosenfels, as well as the better known performativity theory of Judith Butler, and add that, and then also elaborate on the 2 short stories that are the second half of the book and make them better. That could be a possibility if the other idea couldn't pan out. The other ideas would be to finish. Well, would be to write a science fiction novel called Titanium, in which my idea is to tell the story from the point of view of a journalist who's in, say, his late 20s, and uh, and how he gets to be the person who finally reveals the presence of aliens. And I have a theory about who the aliens are. Some of them are angels from the Bible. There's a way that, and we might get around the speed of light issue that way. Or there's a way of dealing with quantum superposition and entanglement. As long as you have one person who's an agent to deal with the speed of light barriers, there's a way I think it could happen. And so this protagonist worked with another person who's a Fed, who was originally was the protagonist, to predict when the aliens are coming, and then they come, and then I show in the climax how society would react. The thing is, there's a big report on UAPs coming out soon, and Trump could just possibly announce it. Could spoil the party for me. He might announce that we have proof. I think it's possible. The proximate B stuff is kind of interesting. It could be just 4 light years away, too. It just might be. Then the third thing is to finish the music I showed you at the beginning, to show you to finish that third sonata. There's one big part of the finale I haven't composed, and to get on with Avid Sibelius and get it done and make it performable. And also maybe enhance the second sonata and make it more interesting. I need a virtuoso pianist to do that. And then I have a cantata that I had imagined, which is based on the rich young ruler parable in the Bible, and both, I think it's Matthew and Luke, about Jesus. And I passed through several characters sort of a chain of characters who simulate the rich young ruler or the doubting Thomas, till I finally get to myself at the end. And it would be about 30 minutes long, with a chamber orchestra and voices, and sort of in a Schoenbergian, sort of somewhat atonal style that I think is effective but I have a little bit of that sketched. But I was doing that during the pandemic. I'm working on that during the pandemic at home, but it hasn't gotten that far. So a lot of this would keep me busy, and I would have less time to be online and keep on making videos. And I'm probably not going to be able to make them as often because I'm going through the same material over and over with particularly the gender identity issues and so forth. Maybe one more pass at it. I am going to talk about religion and sexuality, my own take, and which may be controversial soon. So that's essentially what I see coming ahead. I kind of have to warn people again. I'm not going to join up one side or the other and erase my identity. And there are things that could happen that could make it just impossible for me to function with my own individual reputation intact. That could happen. I don't think it's as likely that Trump or the right's going to come after me as some other people. But there are ways it could have. And, or if we have martial law or something like that, something really big were to happen, and if the whole internet was shut down, or I don't know, you can think of things. One of the things I don't accept is the idea of having my life bargained for. So I would never allow myself to be kidnapped. That would be the end of my life if somebody tried to kidnap me. There have been a couple of 2 or 3 situations in the past, since in the last 2 decades, where I canceled for getting out of a situation I had promised to, because I thought there was some risk, some physical risk. Maybe I was a little bit cowardly, but I just can't take the risk of something like that. I'm very wary of driving in areas where there's the district, like where there's a lot of carjacking, even though I have an old car. For example, if they can take the car, but they can't take me. It's kind of the issue. But I stay away from. I have to be very careful with that. That would be the end of everything. because I won't tolerate my life being bargained for. That I'm not going to go to Israel and visit Israel or take the chance of being there. What's going on there. I'm not going to have anything to do with that personally. So that's what I had today. And just outlining my plans, and with a degree of candor and a degree of concern about the stability and how something could be yanked away from me. One of the things, I didn't always do everything I could have done to prove I could earn my way. One of the things I think is, when you're in my position and you're not completely adequate in your biological sex, I didn't marry and have children. I became a gay male. But when you're not doing everything society expects, you have to compensate. You're not sharing the burden of raising the next generation. Now, with gay marriage today, I was 72 when Obergefell happened, but people have more opportunity to do that, to adopt children, to participate. But even having children is a major way of participating. And I think that that's a big deal now, becoming a bigger deal again with the concerns over birth rate. But when you're in my position, I think people expect you to bring other people into your life that were struggling, and let them befriend you and take care of them, rather than affiliate with people that you think are stronger than you and become more involved with charity, or become more involved with established charities and with established interests that might have been spelled out for you when you inherited the trust. That didn't really happen with me. There's not a lot of people left, not a lot left in the family. That's one of the things. A lot of people didn't have children, very many children, so that didn't happen. But a lot of times, you're supposed to do what your beneficiaries want you to do. And that can be a tricky thing, because one of them is very involved in the transgender issue. Oh, and I wanted to mention, when I was talking about the books, I didn't mention that. I never mentioned in any of these three books the transgender issue at all. The last one was written in 2013, and it was just starting to get talked about a little bit, and it didn't really become much more visible till 2017, 2018, and not really visible till after the pandemic. So I didn't pay any attention to it at all, because I thought everybody who was trans was transitioned and an adult, and it wasn't controversial. There just were a few people who weren't. That wasn't controversial at all. So I never covered the issue at all, never even mentioned it, even in the 2013 book. That would have to change. But whether I can join politically and take a side and support, I can't support all the things being expected, that the left expects minors to have access to in good faith. I simply can't support it, because of the issue of consent, and the uncertainty of the medicine. I think there's some uncertainty, and because of the belief that a belief is people are being forced to accept another belief, that gender identity exists in your soul separately from sex. And it really doesn't. It's really your polarity. Rosenfels talked about polarities back in the 70s. Your polarity can be masculine and feminine, and can be objective and subjective. But those were personal growth things that were in your personal life. They weren't supposed to be public markers. And now, in the 2010s, they came along and people took an idea like that and tried to make them into public markers. I understand why they did, because we had to have something for children, for present young people when it was happening in society, and before they were old enough to learn in school, even take biology. So they came up with, the academia came up with that. Indirectly, I was probably part of that. So that is a big concern. So, someone in my position is more expected to bond with people that may be more troubled, or maybe less capable of having their own agency, so to speak. Let's put it that way, enforcing than I was. But I'm not as been as willing to do that as people probably would have expected me to do. And I do have to admit that, but that's kind of the way it is right now. So those five big things are the goals for the next 4 years. Just wanted to go over that with you today and just let you know how things are. And I do thank you for listening.